Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this month's CRSJ 101 membership event from the ABA section of Civil Rights and Social Justice. My name is Paula Shapiro, and I am the section director. And we're really excited to have a specialized CRSJ 101 today about, and we're going to be focusing on our Amicus briefs. And we have with us our section secretary and the chair of the section's ABA Amicus Committee, Paul Smith, who I'm going to turn it over to.
Thank you, Paula, and thank you, everybody, for joining this. We're happy to talk a little bit about our wonderful section and then to move on and talk about one of the best things the section does, which is the working with the overall association to file amicus briefs. But first, since we're doing 101, this is the basic information about the leadership of the section. We have an 8-person executive committee, which I have just joined as the new secretary. There's Robin Runge is our chair this year, doing a spectacular job. Chair-elect Lacey. Mario's after her in the line of succession. We have 2 spectacular section delegates to the House of Delegates, Mark Schickman and Wendy Mariner. Richard Soden does the budget officer role, and Juan Thomas, our chair last year, is still around because we won't let him go. And so that's the executive committee. Of course, in addition to that, there's an entire council that makes policy for the section, which meets 4 times a year. And then there's all kinds of other ways that people can get involved in the section. And a big part of the life of the section is the 21, what we call substantive committees. And as you can see, if you've joined this section because you care about civil rights or social justice, which I have to assume, there is clearly a committee for you. We cover pretty much the waterfront of all of the issues of the day, and are the place in the ABA when so much of this important stuff is discussed. And the nice thing about a committee is it's very easy to get involved. You simply find out when they're meeting and you join the meeting. Everybody will be very happy to have a new passionate member join the committee. So find one that you're interested in and try it out. See what the meetings are like. They all have remarkable projects. Every quarter we have our council meeting and hear about all of the amazing work that these committees do. It is really the life of the section in many ways. So join a committee. And then we have other kinds of projects and initiatives that the section does. One of them is this policy implementation committee, which is designed hopefully to actually turn the policies we get passed by the House of Delegates into actual implementation. This is always an issue that the ABA tries to solve, which is how to get the world to actually pay attention and listen to us, and legislatures in particular. And so we work on that continuously. Some of these other projects, some of them are more active than others, but 2 really big things right now are one is the chair chat, which Juan started last year in his chairship. He did it every single week. He would interview a special guest online. Robin is taking a slightly different approach. She's passing out the opportunity to participate in this every other week, and is still doing quite a bit of them themselves. And they're really wonderful conversations with really interesting people. So another great way to sort of get involved in the section is simply to watch the chair chats. We also have a very active democracy project that is trying to focus this year, as you can imagine, on protecting the democracy in a nonpartisan way, with participation in important election protection work. And so some of these others are available to be reactivated or get activated. They're all on the website of the section. And so anything that piques your interest, inquire about what the status is and whether you can get involved. So here, the main substance about this particular CRSJ 101 is amicus briefs. And as Paula said, I am the chair for the section of a committee called the Section Amicus Brief Committee. But that does not mean that we as a section file amicus briefs. The way the ABA functions is that only the ABA as a whole can file amicus briefs. But the idea of a brief does come up through a section, division, or forum. And so we are, at least especially in recent years, as you can see from this list, by far the most active division of the ABA in terms of proposing amicus briefs to the association. And so what we filed, when I became chair of the committee, for some reason, it may have had to do with the fact that there was a new, more conservative Supreme Court. All of a sudden, they took like 6 incredibly big cases, which we had to deal with. So Moore v. Harper, the big independent state legislature election cases. 303 Creative is the website creator who doesn't want to help serve same-sex couple. Holland is a case about, incredibly important case about Indian Child Welfare Act. There's the affirmative action case. There's a big voting rights case called Merrill versus Milligan. Everybody knows what Dobbs is. So these were the cases that we got involved in and tried to make sure that the ABA's point of view was represented. And we think it was very well represented in all of these cases because we got some wonderful fine law firms to help us with this project. And we were there and spoke to the justices about how ABA policy is relevant to these issues that are before the court. So let's go to the next slide and talk about how this process works. And so there are several stages of the process. First of all, you should know that we don't file amicus briefs in trial courts, intermediate appellate courts, occasionally on behalf of a cert petition, but mostly it's on the merits in the court that's going to be the final court to hear the case, which means for most of the issues in the United States Supreme Court. A state Supreme Court is certainly a possibility, but most of the time it's the United States Supreme Court. And if you see a United States Supreme Court case that's coming toward being heard in the court, we would love you to bring it to our attention if you think it's something the ABA ought to weigh in on. And we make decisions about what to weigh in on primarily by looking at what issues we have policy on. Having policy means that the House of Delegates has, in the past, passed some resolution that takes a position on the issue in a way that would mean that we could make a helpful and meaningful contribution to the court's consideration of the case. And so somebody comes to us with an idea, we decide it looks important, we look and find the policy that we think supports a request for an amicus by the ABA. And then the process works really well because we have a wonderful liaison in the Office of General Counsel, Justin Hoopert, who advises us whether he thinks we have enough policy to go forward, whether the case is in the right procedural posture to get the ABA involved. It can't be like 5 minutes before the brief is due. And that often is a problem when things don't come to our attention soon enough. But if it looks like it's a go, what we do then is find a law firm that's willing to do the legwork on the brief. And that is often easy to do. People really are happy a lot of the time to file an important brief in a major case in the Supreme Court for the ABA. And the stages of their work begin with drafting an application, which is basically a relatively brief memo explaining why the ABA should file a brief in the case, what the brief would say, how it would differ from what other briefs are going to say, how it works in ABA policy and the like. And that's the document that we submit to Justin in the general counsel's office, and he then submits it to, first of all, the association's amicus committee, which they are the ones who approve the going forward with the project to write an amicus brief. And then the firm gets told, you're a go, start writing. Here's a schedule you're going to have to follow. We need to have a draft here. We're going to have this person from the ABA amicus committee be your sort of shepherd on the process, help you edit it, etc. Eventually, there's a brief. It gets submitted back to the ABA amicus brief committee. They look at it. Maybe they edited it some. Usually, they edited some, and then they decide to go forward with the brief, and they submit it in turn to the Board of Governors with their recommendation that the ABA file it. And so, as you can see, there's a bit of a multi-step process here. We need some weeks to get all of this done and to get all of the approvals in place, but it works pretty well. And the ABA, as you saw, has been able to get really important briefs filed in pretty much all of the big issues of the day, especially issues of the day that concern the section of civil rights and social justice. We do our best to make sure that we don't miss one that really ought to be something we weigh in on. And I really do encourage you to look at what's coming to the Supreme Court and bring it to my attention, bring it to Paula's attention, suggest things that we should look at. One thing I would note that we're currently looking already at is there clearly is a very strong effort to bring up to the United States Supreme Court in the next year and a half, the issue of whether states can constitutionally prohibit minors, transgender minors, from receiving the gender-affirming medical care that their doctors recommend, that their parents support, that they want to receive. But there are a number of states that have, as a political matter in recent months and years, started prohibiting that kind of medical care, despite the fact that it's supported by the medical profession. And we have very, very strong policy on this issue and intend, when the time is right, when the issue is before the Supreme Court, as I think it will be very soon, to file an amicus brief. That's just an example, I think, of the kinds of things that are on the cutting edge, going to the Supreme Court, that we like to be involved in when we have had enough anticipation of the issue in the House of Delegates to get policy on the books. So that's the basic picture. Paul, anything I've left out about the process that you want to fill in there?
No, we're delighted that Catherine Carroll is on as an attendee today, who also chairs the ABA's Amicus committee. But Paul, you did a great job, and that sums it up. The section is incredibly proud of the work that goes into these amicus briefs that have been issued by the ABA. Some of them have been cited by Supreme Court justices in their, well, oftentimes now it's the dissents. It had been previously the opinions. But you know,
it's not always the dissents. Remember the Indian Child Welfare Act case, you know?
That is very true. But we're just really excited that the organization that is the leading voice for lawyers in the United States has the opportunity to have their say in the important cases of today. And we're lucky to have Paul lead our group and help us with that.
But I hope you'll get involved with this process as well. And if you think your firm would be a good candidate to write a brief, let me know that as well. I'm always looking for another firm to write a brief. It has, as you can see, we keep a very high standard of quality, but there are many firms out there that have done this and have been very proud themselves, I think, of the work they've been able to do in partnership with the ABA. And so I would urge you, if you're in a firm, to consider joining that list if you haven't already. I think there's another slide about other advocacy that we do. As you can see, that the number 2 bullet in the lower half is the amicus briefs, which we consider a really important form of advocacy that the ABA does. But the section does a lot of different kinds of things to advocate for important positions on civil rights and social justice, educational programs. We track legislation, we track Supreme Court cases. We had, for example, last year, one organized a wonderful 2-day economic justice summit that was hybrid but convened at Georgetown Law School, convening lawyers, activists, policymakers, and key stakeholders to formulate policy on economic justice, which was his focus as chair for his year. As you can see, there are lots and lots of things that we do to get our word out to important decision makers, whether it's drafting a letter, having a conference, advocating in one way or another. The section of civil rights and social justice gets heard. Indeed, I think we're probably the most vocal section there is on almost all of these issues, and we're very happy that that's the case. And so these are ways to get involved in the section if you're new, or even if you're not new. Help us proposing a webinar and producing it, articles. We have a wonderful magazine that we publish, Human Rights Magazine, lots and lots of opportunities there. Participate as a panelist on a seminar or a moderator. Get involved again in the section committees, producing their own products. Here's the magazine in that bullet, and then get involved in every other way. At the bottom, you see draft resolutions to be adopted by the ABA House of Delegates. We spend an enormous amount of time considering proposed resolutions for the House and sending them to the House and defending them in the House. We are an important part of the House of Delegates deliberation. In every session of the House of Delegates, mid-year and annual meeting, we are there telling them, here are the important issues which you should be caring about, and they generally support us. We have a very good relationship with the broader ABA, and we pass lots and lots of important resolutions so that, for one reason, so that when the amicus brief issue comes along a year or two later, we are ready to file a brief. But of course, those resolutions also have other audiences and play other roles in hopefully formulating public policy, because that's what the ABA really tries to do, as Paula said. So that's, I think, the story. Join us and get involved. This is a great section to be involved with. Everybody's really nice. We do stuff everybody really cares about. And it's not so big that it's hard to get involved. We are really open to new participation. You can become a very influential part of the section very quickly. So I encourage it. With that, thank you very much for joining us today on this CRSJ 101.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, everyone. Again, I just put my email into the chat, so if you have any questions about anything you've heard or anything you want to hear more about, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Thank you, everybody.